Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's webcast. The subtopic today is mechanical and electrical coordination. And one of the things that I know electrical engineers struggle with is getting good information from the mechanical equipment into their project. So one of the things we want to start off with is a family that contains a lot of the information that we're going to need. And then we'll schedule that information, bringing in the mechanical equipment as we go. So one of the first things you need, as I mentioned, is a good family with some proper parameters. So in here I've generated a family that has some user input information and several formulas, so that if my mechanical person gives me a data sheet with only MCA, I can put MCA in, and that's going to calculate down, tell me what my FLA is. And then down here I have breaker rating. And as long as they put in any other information, then we'll get a proper breaker rating. Because ultimately what the electrical engineer is looking for is to figure out what that trip rating on that circuit needs to be, and then sizing the wire appropriately. And if we can automate this system of getting information from the mechanical equipment into a schedule within their project, then the bulk of their work is already done for them. And then creating these formulas, these are based strictly on what you use day to day to convert any of these values into any other value. So if we take a quick look at the FLA, we can see it's looking for input FLA, and if that's greater than 0, then we use that. And then we divide by 1 amp. Same with MCA, but we'll divide that by 1.25, and our kVA, we'll break that down into kWs, voltage, and then we'll also use phase with the square root of 3 in order to come out with a proper amperage. And then when we get completely done, we'll multiply it by 1 amp just to add the units back in. So pretty standard formulas. They might look a little daunting at first, but these are your typical formulas if you break them down into just their component parts. So once I have this information, if we take a look at our floor plan view, I just have a simple motor symbol, some generic annotation placed in here, and that's what I'm going to use in my electrical project to represent the mechanical. Now if we go and look at our mechanical information, I have a couple of air handling units, and you can see they're set up for 208 at 14.4 kVA. But how do we get that information into our electrical model? So if I come down to, I've got my electrical model, ready to go. Go into my lower plan. I can simply take and do a copy monitor. And copy out that equipment. And now I have all that same information within my own project. Now, in order to transfer that information, I can schedule this as it is. I can circuit it as it is. One of the problems that we might come across would be the fact that some of their parameters aren't going to be the same as the parameters that I want to be using. So what I'll do is I'll either run a parameter jammer on it and push my parameters from my schedule into that particular family, or I can come in here and just swap it out for that motor symbol. One of the other issues about the copy monitor is that all of the information that is in the mechanical model does not always come through, and if it changes, it will not alert you. So one of the things we want to do is simply create an equipment schedule with the mark for the element, maybe where it's located, family and type, so we can kind of differentiate between the two. And we have our voltage, phase, breaker rating, and then all of our calculation and user input values. So you can see this, here's the motor symbol that I just created. It does not retain the mark value. Oh, and if you didn't notice, I'm using include element links from the mechanical model so that I can bring those elements in. And as long as I'm matching the mechanical equipment mark, everything's going to kind of line up for me. And I'll go through, filter, and as long as it has a voltage parameter, then that's the equipment that I'm going to be bringing in. And I'll sort it by mark and give a blank line in between each one so I can quickly identify which elements are the same. And the rest of it I don't really care about. If you ever have a question on what type of element or where is that item, you can use highlight in model. And I'm just going to move that up a foot so that it's actually within our space. Control tab and back into my schedule. Now it's reading the room data. And I can see my voltage matches, but I don't have anything here for phase. And maybe the mechanical folks didn't have that information or whatever. So I'll put in phase. So now I've got volts, phase. If I set that to 1, I put in a little calculated value that looks at volts and phase and kind of tells me what what my number of poles integer needs to be. So if this is 208 single phase, I need to have a 2-pole connection. And we can't use number of poles within a formula. So we had to come through and just use a calculated value. So I can change that. If we come over a little further, here I've got full load amps based upon the kVA within our mechanical equipment. So if you recall back here in our mechanical model, if I select this, I have 14.4 kVA, and you'll notice that I have two sessions of Revit open, one with my electrical model and one with my mechanical model. The reason for that is I cannot open my mechanical model in the same session without it unloading that link. So I can come back into my project. I know that air handling unit 25 is going to be the same as 24. So under my user input, I'll drop in my VAs, and that's going to populate my full load amps and my breaker rating based upon volts and phase and my MCA. So from here, it's just a matter of scheduling these or circuiting these, and then keeping an eye on them as far as if the equipment moves, gets updated. Say for instance, the voltage for this unit changes. Come in here, grab my voltage, and that changes to 480. And then they send you an update. Now I can come into my electrical project, go to Manage Links, reload my mechanical model, go back to my equipment schedule, and you'll see that now that equipment did change to 480, so I can update these, and now my breaker rating comes down. We can do that with any number of equipment pieces. One of the other ways that we could do it, if you're feeling like applying some of those parameters to your mechanical equipment, we can come under Systems, Mechanical, load our motor symbol family, drop it somewhere within the model, come back to our electrical. I'm going to right click this schedule, save to a new file, put that on my desktop as well. Come back into my mechanical model, insert my equipment schedule, say OK, and OK. There's my equipment schedule. And you'll see that some of the things are being populated, full load amps, obviously, but not really any of the other ones. My motor symbol is populating all the way through. So what we can do is we can use Parameter Jammer to grab that information we can use Pick Family to make sure we get the right one. Hit Next. We can grab all these pieces, hit Next. Finish. And that didn't work as expected. Our other option would be to come into Family Processor and actually use this to change our parameters from within this family and push them into an entire library. Select all, push that in. Oops. That's really all there is to it. So we can get our information back and forth between the two projects, get notifications, and set our voltage and phase based upon the equipment that we're getting from the mechanical engineers, and getting our breaker rating for our circuits. And then once we're done, we can simply power these up based upon the number of poles. Now change this panel to 480. Electrical circuit, select the panel. And there's my piece of equipment. You can go back, do the same thing. It'll default to the same panel. I can just hit OK. There's my other one. Now, if all we want to do is show our motor symbols without the Revit links, we can set him to halftone, or we can turn off our mechanical equipment. Are there any questions? All right. Well, I appreciate you watching today's webcast. And again, this will be placed up on our YouTube channel, so you can watch it later. Thank you and have a good afternoon.